I'm Terry. I'm reading chapter 2 from Dr. Agresti's book, Tales from the Couch. And chapter 2 is She Thinks She is Fat. I met with Christine for a first visit. She was 16 years old, petite, pretty, with blonde hair and blue eyes. She came into the office with her father, Clyde, and mother, Pam. Her father owned a large business that transported food by trucks all over the state of Florida, and her mother was the principal of her high school. When they came into my office, the way they sat was telling. Pam sat right next to Christine in front of my desk, while Clyde settled on the couch off to the side, even though there was another chair next to Christine available. It was immediately clear that the mother, Pam, was very authoritarian, very involved, maybe even overly so. It was also very clear that Christine was filled to the brim with anger, maybe even hate. It was barely contained, and you could feel it in the room. The mother, Pam, immediately launched into a whole history and a list of things about Christine. Pam said that Christine has these issues with thinking that she's fat when she's not, that she is on the cheerleading squad, that she sings in the school choir, that she gets straight A's. I looked at Christine, at her eyes filled with rage, and what I saw was an exceptional angry girl. When I asked what specifically brought them to see me, the mother, Pam, said, well, food keeps disappearing in the house. At this, Christine's anger boiled over. She immediately said, no, it doesn't. That's total crap. Why would you say that? Then Pam says she always runs to the bathroom after we eat, to which Christine yelled, that's so stupid. I can't help when I have to use the bathroom. Christine forged ahead, and we found laxatives and diuretic boxes in her room. Doctor. Christine was fuming and said, so dumb. I didn't say you could just go in my room. And anyway, those boxes weren't mine. Those were my friend, Jamie's, and I just agreed to get rid of them for her. The arguing was very loud and went on back and forth, tit for tat, for more than 20 minutes. Christine would stare her mother down and rage at everything her mother said. Pam continued, saying that she finds cookies, donuts, loaves of bread, candy, and all kinds of food hidden in Christine's room. She said that sometimes they even find bottles of vodka hidden in her room. Christine hasn't said much, just that her mother is full of it, doesn't know what she's talking about, and other things along that line. Her father, Clyde, had yet to say anything. He sat in silence, but once the arguing was over, he took the opportunity to add, I'm just a bit shocked because Christine is the sweetest, most dutiful, most loyal, sensitive, caring, and brightest girl I know. She excels in everything she does. She gets straight A's. She's polite at school. Her teachers love her. She has great friends. I actually felt a little sorry for Clyde. I got the idea that he felt like a beleaguered outsider just looking in on his family. After the shouting, we're 30 minutes into this, and I'm beginning to put all of this together. I'm starting to get the feeling that the parents put a lot of pressure on Christine, especially her mother, Pam, since she was the principal of the school she was in. Christine was expected to make straight A's, to get the lead in the play, to be in the choir, to be on the cheerleading squad, to keep her weight down, to be fit, to dress to impress, and to look pretty. As we spoke, it was obvious that Pam was very consumed with these things. They weren't asked of Christine, they were demanded of Christine. There were no healthy boundaries between the two of them as mother and daughter. Pam was enmeshed in Christine's life. Her statements made it clear that she was very critical of Christine's image. What she was wearing, her weight, shape, and size. Christine was basically Pam's Barbie doll, and she would dress her up and show her off. She came off as controlling, a status seeker, all about the presentation, and Christine was Pam's exhibit A to the world. I was certain that it had been this way for Christine's entire life. This drew her ire, and that fueled her rage. Unfortunately, since we spent so much time arguing, that was essentially the end of the first session. I had a good idea of what was going on, even though I hadn't had the chance to speak to Christine alone. Yeah, she needed a parentectomy, stat. Given the lack of boundaries and Pam's controlling ways, it may be difficult to make that happen, but I said, well, next session, let me speak to Christine alone. To my surprise, Pam gave no resistance, and we agreed I'd see her back in a few days. So Christine comes back 3 days later. Her mother, Pam, remained in the waiting room. With an eating disorder as my differential diagnosis, I obviously pay attention to a patient's body size as well as look at other physical traits. Christine was petite, about 5'4", and I'd say that she was of normal weight. She sat in the chair with her knees up to her chest, curled up in a little ball. I wanted her to know that I had an idea of what was up, so I said to her, Christine, I've been working with eating disorders for 20 plus years. Can we just talk a little bit about what's going on? I want to help you, but for that to happen, I need you to be honest. What's happening? She simply said, I just fight with my mother. She expects me to get good grades. She expects me to do all these activities and to be the best at everything. I'm never good enough for her. I can always do better. All she cares about is that I look good and I get A's. I have to look good to make her look good. She says it all the freaking time. Then, in a mocking, high-pitched, sing-song voice, she said, when you look good, I look good. The way she said it was obviously that this was something she was told all the time, every day for years. It was almost a mantra drilled into her, and she proceeded to spend the whole session consumed with talking about her mother. She skated around, hinted at, and almost admitted to having an eating disorder when she said, it's my mother's fault that I'm like this. She was still very angry. She remained sitting with her knees up to her chest, with her chin resting on her knees, and she was pissed off. Since I was the one in line of fire, she railed at me. You're not going to be able to help me. What good do you think you are? I could see that we were not forming a good doctor-patient relationship, which is crucial to successful psychotherapy. She didn't trust me. She was mad and figured she knew everything. In other words, she was a typical teenager. I didn't hear anything from them for about a month. Then one afternoon, I got a call from her mother, Pam. She asked, can we come back in? When I asked what was happening, she said, well, Christine was in the hospital. She drank a quart of vodka. She's okay, but they'd like her to see you. So I said, all right, bring her in. When I saw Christine back in the office, she was noticeably thinner. She took up her usual position on the chair, knees to chest, chin resting on her knees. I said, Christine, are we going to talk now? What happened? She said, I hate myself. I hate who I am. I hate how I look. I'm fat. I'm ugly. I just want to die. These words send a chill down a doctor's spine. It's like a giant stop sign with blinking red lights. Before anything else, you must determine if this is a statement of fact or just a statement. So I asked her, are you really planning to kill yourself, Christine? Tearfully, she said, no, I just hate my body. I just feel like my life is totally out of control. I said, okay, I'm glad to hear that you're not serious about killing yourself, but we need a contract with each other. If you ever are serious that you want to harm yourself, just tell me. I won't be angry, and I can help you. She agreed, so I continued. Now can we be honest with one another? She nodded. So I said, Christine, from the look of you, I know something is going on with your food. I said, I'm very worried that you're doing something. I'm thinking you're making yourself vomit after eating. With a somewhat forced indignance, she said, whatever. You don't know what you're talking about, I said. Christine, put your hands on my desk. She put her hands on my desk. I said, lay your palms flat on the desk. I want you to look at your knuckles. Why are your right knuckles all cut, scarred, red, and bruised? She said, I don't know, maybe from cheerleading. To this I said, come on, Christine. Could it really be because you're putting your fingers down your throat as deep as you can to induce vomiting, and those marks are from your teeth clamping down? Again, she basically said that I didn't know what I was talking about. So I continued, I don't know, Christine. Have you noticed you get these little red dots in your eyes? Those are called petechiae. They're little blood vessels that basically pop in your eyes from gagging and vomiting. Have you noticed you're getting them? She said, yeah, I noticed that. Those just showed up. I didn't do anything. I'm not throwing up. and I picked up my cell phone and I took a picture of her with it. I showed her the picture and said, Christine, look at the sides of your jaw, right where the jaw bends, the maxilla, where the parotid gland is. Look at this. I pointed to the area and said, it looks like a chipmunk face. What's going on with that? It's all puffy. She looked and just said, nothing is going on with that. She was running out of ammo to combat me. I said, come on, Christine. I told you I've done a lot of work with patients with eating disorders. There's nothing you can say to explain all this away. I'm not judging you. I want to help you, but you have to tell me what's going on for me to do that. Now she was backed into a corner, totally out of ammo. She only had one option open, retreat. She yelled, you don't know anything, seriously. Boom. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Just before the door shut, I caught a glimpse of Pam standing there, alarmed. I took a deep breath, exhaled, and went back out to the waiting area. I said, Christine, can you come back in, please? We need to talk about this. And Pam stepped in and said, I think you've talked enough today. All you've done is upset her. I rarely relent, but I was waving the white flag for the day. This was just another reminder of the lack of boundaries between the two of them. Mothers and girls with eating disorders are always quick to place blame on doctors or anyone else, anyone other than themselves. But you know how the saying goes, when you point at others, there's always a couple of fingers pointing back at you. I said, okay, fine. I was just trying to make a point with Christine. I'm concerned about her psychological well-being and her physical health. Pam said nothing, just put her arm around Christine's shoulders and walked her out of the office. That was that. Not surprisingly, I didn't hear from Christine or her mother, Pam, for a while, more than 8 months. Pam called to make an appointment. Christine was now 17 at the point. Pam tells me that Christine overdosed on oxycodone. When Christine came back into my office, she sat down in the chair in her usual configuration, curled in a ball, chin on her knees. She was much thinner. I said, Christine, what's going on with the oxycodone now? She said, I just tried it. I wanted to feel nothing. I swear I hate my life. I asked her what she'd been up to since I'd seen her. She told me that she had spent 1 month in Renfrew Clinic in Philadelphia for bulimia. She said it didn't do much good. I could see she was much more comfortable with me. We were developing a rapport. Whether that was from her maturing a bit from finally admitting to her eating disorder or just simple resignation, I didn't know. But I'd take it. I said, what happened? What's the deal with the pills and the alcohol? She said, it's not a big deal. I've just tried them a few times, off and on. And I just took too much. And I took them while I was drinking. I said, well, you ended up in the hospital, so it is a big deal. It's bad enough to experiment with the oxys, but to do it with alcohol is just reckless. You could have died, Christine. Was that the idea? Did you want to kill yourself? She shook her head and said no. So I had to take her at her word. I asked her, so now that you've taken an unsuccessful test drive with the oxys, you're done, right? She just said, right. I didn't know that I believed her, so time would have to tell that tale. I told her that I'd like to follow her every week for a while, and she shrugged and said that was okay with her. As she started coming in every week, we continued to strengthen our rapport. We talked about all the things 17-year-old girls talk about, boy drama and girlfriend drama and mama drama. It was always some drama filled with fighting and accusing him of cheating on her, this one not getting along with that one, and general teenage angst. These were accompanied by some more serious topics on control issues, anger and rages, the sense of feeling empty and low self-esteem. She also told me, I'm with these boys and I know what they want, but I don't like having sex. It just brings back bad memories. I said, Christine, people who have eating disorders also have a lot of issues with sexual abuse. About 80% to 90% of people with bulimia have some sort of history with sexual abuse. With that, she started crying. When I asked her, she said, I'm not going to talk about it. I said, okay. I don't really need to hear about it, but I feel like you fall into that group. She didn't say no, so I felt safe in that assumption. Over time, I could see that the eating disorder was getting out of control, even though she had said nothing about it. These individuals are very secretive. They eat in secret, they vomit in secret, they hide the things that contribute to or cause their disorders. It should be called the secretive syndrome. Christine and all the physical traits that were becoming more obvious. In addition to the general continual weight loss, she was getting bigger, puffier cheeks where her parotid glands were. Her teeth were kind of yellowing a little because her stomach acids were eating up the white enamel of her teeth and destroying them. Her voice was a little hoarse from throwing up and the stomach acids irritating her throat. Her skin was dry, her lips were chapped, her hair was dry and frizzy with split ends. Her nails were uneven and very short, bitten to the quick. Her hands were scarred from inducing herself to vomit. Her eyes were red with petechate. She looked weak. Just in looking at her whole body, you could see that her head seemed a little bigger because she had lost so much body mass. Through it all, she maintained her appearance pretty well. Whether that was to appease her mother Pam or by choice, I didn't know, but I suspect it was more the former than the latter. After a couple of months, we moved her to monthly sessions unless there was some sort of issue that brought her in sooner. Eventually, she finished high school, then started her first year of college. By this time, I've been seeing her for more than 2 years, and we had developed a very good therapeutic relationship. We spoke regularly. She would tell me about each individual boyfriend and problems with her girlfriends. It seemed like all of her relationships were chaotic. She was still fighting with her mother all the time. She fought with herself too. She had developed this body image of herself as fat. In fact, she was getting far too thin. But what she saw in the mirror was fat. This false body image is called body dysmorphia and is a hallmark of eating disorders. Among other things, she told me about constant diuretic and laxative abuse. She worked out excessively. She had a routine. She would run 7 to 10 miles a day on the beach, then get on an elliptical trainer, then go to yoga class and then a spin class. It took her at least 5 hours just to work out every day. Obviously, I continually educated her on the dangers of diuretic and laxative use and the issues with excessive exercise as well as her bulimia. But she already knew all that. You really couldn't tell her anything. She's 19 years old, an adult, and every time I saw her, she looked like she was going a little further downhill. I'm seeing her teeth yellow, her hair thin, and her skin get very dry. She's very, very thin. She has puffy cheeks and her head looks like it doesn't go with her body. She was so very thin that her head looked way too big. One day, out of the blue, she said, I never told anyone the details, but something terrible happened to me. When I asked what happened, she said, on my 16th birthday, my parents got me a convertible Mustang. And I said, well, so far so good. She continued, okay, this is what happened. I was driving in Boca with the top down, and I was at a red light, and these 2 guys pulled me out of the car at a red light. They dragged me into the bushes. One raped me, and after that, they made me perform oral sex on them. Then the other one raped me again. They took turns. My stomach was in knots. All I could manage was, oh my God, Christine, I'm really sorry to hear that. She said, that's when I first tried the oxys. I said, wow. Well, I know why you went bad then. She just said, yeah, that's when I lost control. I had completely given up at that point. The oxys made me not feel. I liked that because feeling nothing was better than feeling anything. We talked about it for a little more. It seemed to me that she had compartmentalized the rape chapter of her life, just put it in a metal box and shoved it in the back of her brain like an old pair of shoes in a closet. Somewhere around 19 to 20-ish, she dropped out of college. I tried to talk her out of it, but her mind was made up. She was also making some other permanent changes. She started getting all these tattoos. At that point, I knew that this was a bad sign. She had an apartment near school. Apparently, her parents didn't know she was getting tattoos on her arms. She had been a pretty girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. Now she was painfully thin. Her hair was half green. Her back teeth were rotting, and she had all these horrible tattoos of the Grim Reaper, swords, and crosses. They were awful. All signs pointed south. She continued to hoard food and compulsively exercise. She was abusing diuretics and laxatives. She had collapsed a few times while out running and got taken to the emergency room where they told her that she was dehydrated. I knew it was from diuretics and laxatives. Then she collapsed in the mall, again from the diuretics and laxatives. She was fluid and electrolyte depleted, and it was getting dangerous. And at this point, she would admit to me and no one else that she was eating large amounts of food and inducing vomiting. She said she could barely look in the mirror anymore. She was getting all this pus around her back teeth, and she said she actually bought a needle and would drain the pus out of her mouth. She told me some other horrible things. She was able to bite her toenails, and she was eating the dead skin. Eventually, enough was enough. She needed to go back to Renfrew for her eating disorder. I was in touch with her doctors there, and they kept me up to date. She was working on things, doing intensive therapy while there. She was in a course of this dialectical behavioral therapy. It's a type of therapy that helps you develop skills to deal with painful emotions and decrease conflict in relationships. She was on 60 milligrams of fluoxetine, which seemed to be helping. After 90 days of treatment, she came back from Renfrew and started our monthly sessions again. She looked a little better, but I wouldn't know how she would settle out until some time passed. I'd see how she did and go from there. I continued to keep her therapist in the loop. The therapist and I were very motivated to keep Christine moving forward. Even Christine was motivated than I'd ever seen her. More motivated than I'd ever seen her. She went to a classroom and learned behavioral skills once a week. She went on for about a year. She continued individual therapy once a week. They would also speak to her by phone every day, and she would call them by phone whenever she needed them, as she could me. She had a lot of mindfulness training where they would teach her what to do when she felt distressed, and they also taught her how to deal with interpersonal relationships and how to regulate emotions. Through all of that, we continue monthly sessions. She had a great team of people behind her, and she was making some progress. To celebrate that success, she was rewarded with breast implants. Over time, her body was becoming more slight, so the head and the breasts looked more oversized. She almost looked like a caricature of her former self. Time flew by, and when she was 22-ish, she said she had a confession to make. Oh boy. This cannot be good. With a measure of concern, I asked her what it was. She told me that about a year ago, she had gotten a job. Nobody knew about it, meaning her parents didn't know. When I asked what it was, she said she was dancing, the exotic variety, at a local place called Maryland's. I wasn't shocked by her choice of occupation. For her, this would work because it's sort of a position of power. She could control how men viewed her and how much of her they viewed. When she saw that I wasn't judging her, she said she had another confession to make. She said she was bringing in $1,500 to $2,500 a night, a vivid reminder, being a little concerned by this high dollar amount. Then she said she had another confession and asked me if I could keep a secret. When I told her that I was bound to keep secrets by profession, she got honest with me. She said that her boss at the club gave her a back room so that if any men wanted something more, she could take them back. She was permitted to give oral sex. That's where both she and her boss drew the line. There were only two rules: oral sex only, split the profits with the boss. That's it. That's how she was bringing in the big bucks. She said that the guys at the club loved her because her body was so petite and looked 16, but she had large breasts. She said that they had even been the source of inspiration for her stripper name, which was Sweet 16. When I asked her if she liked her job, she said she really did. She joked that she had gone from the prim and proper schoolgirl concerned with the length of her hem and if she had got the lead in the play, to a tattooed stripper with crazy color hair dancing on a pole. I could easily see why this resonated with her. Throughout her entire childhood and growing up, her mother held all the cards and had all the control. Now that she was out of her mother's house and from under her thumb, she found a way to control. She learned she could control her body, its size, shape, and decoration, control what she ate and if she kept it down, and now she could control men and their fantasies of her. This would also fit in with the trauma of her rape. Those men had overpowered her literally and figuratively, and this was a way for her to get some of that power back. I think she was surprised that I didn't judge her and that I could be a safe keeper of her secrets. Less than a year later, she told me that she had another confession. She said that she and her boyfriend had been planning on eloping, but the relationship fell apart because her boyfriend wanted to have kids and she wasn't able to have children because of what she had done to her body with the eating disorder. It had completely halted her menstrual cycle, so her ability to conceive was impaired. As a result, she no longer felt like a woman. I also thought that with all the abuse to her body, her sexual drive was just gone. As time passed and she got older, her body almost seemed to be shrinking. After about 2.5 years dancing, she quit Maryland's. Her face was swelling, so her face kept getting bigger relative to the size of her body. With her large breasts, she looked imbalanced. She was getting an increase in her rage responses. She was having sore throat. She started complaining of bloody vomit. She had to have surgery for really severe hemorrhoids. I think that was all the laxative abuse. And she always looked like she was unstable on her feet. She was 5 feet 4 inches tall and now weighed maybe 85 pounds, if that. She developed trichotillomania, a hair pulling habit, so between that and hair loss, she had bald patches on her head. Her back teeth were turning black and falling out, and her gums were red and inflamed. After the split with her fiance, she went back to living in an apartment alone, and she sort of cloistered herself and hid from people. She lived with her dogs, and the only contact she had with people in the outside world was over the internet. Eventually, she met a boyfriend on the other side of the country through the internet and was planning on moving to Portland at some point. It seemed they talked about her moving a lot for a while, but she never moved. Her father continued to send checks every month, but she always lived this secretive existence. Eventually, with time and maturation, it seemed that the rage toward her mother finally subsided. When she was 24 to 25-ish, she said she had a confession. Looking back at this was a pattern with her. Whenever she was planning on revealing any secrets, she couched it as a confession, as though they were sins, another remnant from her upbringing. In any case, when I asked her what it was, she dropped the bomb that she had been using oxys again for quite a while. She had done a decent job of fooling me. A lot of the symptoms of drug abuse could be easily explained away by her eating disorder. The bloody vomit and the weakness, I'm sure, came from both. When I asked for details, she said I started on them right after I started dancing. I've been taking like 3 30-milligram oxys a day. That's 90 milligrams a day in a girl who weighed 85 pounds. I asked her, so you're hooked? She nodded, yeah. You've got to help me. I want to get off this stuff. I said, all right, Christine, I'll tell you what. There is something called buprenorphine. It's made to detox from opiates. I'll put you on it, but leave the oxys alone. You need to be off of them for at least 24 hours. Then you're going to come in and do a urine drug toxicology test so I can make sure there's no opiate in your system. Then I want you to start taking 4 milligrams of buprenorphine twice a day. Then come back in 3 days after that. If you have any problems, feel free to call me or text me. She texted me once to say that things were going well. When I saw her next, a few days later, she said, your buprenorphine stuff worked. I said, great, okay, so you're on the 4 milligram buprenorphine twice a day. You're not taking any other opiates. You have no cravings to use, and you're not withdrawing. That's all good, but in order to get this medication, you do have to come see me every month to do a urine test to make sure you're not using anything. Another good thing about that was that I could monitor her weight loss because she was getting thinner all the time. She dutifully came to the office every month for the urine test and therapy, so I had treated Christine from age 16 to age 26, and she finally trusted me enough to where we could talk and she could tell me when the eating disorder was kicking in. She had stopped using the oxys and the laxatives and the diuretics and completely stopped exercising. I told her the key to this illness was going to be controlling what she ate. If she ate too much, we knew she would vomit or would go back to using diuretics and or laxatives again. She put herself on a fairly structured food intake schedule, and that seemed to really help. She said a lot of it was about control. She just felt so out of control in her life. At least she could control her body and her food. Along with control, the other overriding theme with Christine was secrecy. She really never told anyone what she did, when she threw up, when she ate, what she ate. It took her nearly 10 years to confess everything to me, but I suspect that she still holds some secrets. In those 10 years, we've controlled the binge purge cycle and eased her negative thoughts about herself, her body image, and her body shape. Slowly, that negativity sort of started to fall away, and she became more self-accepting. In those 10 years, we have resolved most of the emotional issues related to that horrific rape. To this day, only 2 people know of that rape, and one of them is me. We continue appointments on a monthly basis. I still see her future as very tenuous. The body image issues don't seem to go away completely. The food issues don't seem to go away completely, and her sense of self-hate and sense of having no self-worth continues. So we continue work on that. She tries to maintain relationships with men, but she feels like less of a woman because she can't conceive. She managed to get a job as a waitress, and that at least gets her out of the house and allows her to make a few dollars. But she still counts on financial support from her father. She's still seeing the Portland guy she met online. He comes out from time to time, and they seem to get along okay. She really hopes to have a completely normal life someday, and I hope I can help her get there. She thinks she's fat, and I'll continue to hold up the mirror and show her that she's not.